for all the value that social media can bring to us, in general, we are becoming way less decent as a secular people. Case in point, over Mother's Day weekend of all things, a pregnancy center in Wisconsin was burned by protesters over the decision of the Supreme Court to potentially overturn Roe v. Wade. And protesters showed up at the private residences of the Supreme Court justices in an attempt to stage an insurrectionist style protest to try to dissuade these guys from making a decision on Roe v. Wade that they don't like. So here's a little bit of those protesters at the homes of these justices.
Chevy Chase, Maryland, to make one thing clear.
You don't get to take away my bodily autonomy and enjoy your Saturday night at home. You can do one or the other.
First stop, Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home, where they were greeted by Montgomery County police officers. Then they headed over to Chief Justice John Roberts' residence with a similar message.
Hands off our bodies! Hands off our bodies! Hands off our bodies!
All right, so these protests outside the House of Supreme Court justices were followed by a tweet that went viral by a guy named JDG Trannon. And he said this: if Kavanaugh doesn't like the pro-abortion protest outside his house, he can simply drive or relocate to a different state, right? So to this genius man, Josh, he does have a point. Sure, what's happening outside the homes of these justices do not yet break any laws. Although the question is not really one about the legality of what they're doing. Besides, it also feels a little bit insurrection-y, doesn't it? And if the shoe was on the other foot and the media were covering this kind of stuff as they should, don't you think they'd be flipping out and the supposed fascist right wing would get charged for something? So these people can do this outside these guys' house, but it doesn't make it right. There's all sorts of things that are legal, but you are a scumbag if you do them. But honestly, it's not surprising that this kind of behavior online gets liked by people because, I mean, at least in the Roe v. Wade case, we're talking about people who believe in dismembering children in the womb. So, you know, no wonder they think it's perfectly decent behavior to go outside of Supreme Court justices' homes. But beyond the insanity of social media and beyond the indecency of people in society, maybe there's kind of a third point underneath all of this that's really the point, I guess, at the end of the day, is that as we become more secular, we are getting stupider. And by secularism, I mean the removal of faith from the public square. As we move further from it, are we not becoming a little bit denser? I have to make this quick, so forgive me for the succinctness. But is reality caused or uncaused? Do laws like the law of motion and law of gravity appear from nothing? Is the fact that our planet is in a privileged position to maintain life really just an accident? If we find that there may be some rationality behind the things that we see every single day, we may have to make an obvious and very clear conclusion that people don't want to admit to, and that is that there is a creator behind the creation. And to deny that ultimately looks like mental suicide. It takes more faith to be an atheist than it does to be a Christian. So that's why I say secularism is making us dumber. Now, I could go further than that, but suffice to say, perhaps some of what we're seeing as a society is an indication that as we move further from religious ideas and institutions, that actually what is happening is that we're becoming less smart. All right, so I'm going to prove that today as we jump into some of our headlines. So let's do that now. So Democrats are mad that Roe v. Wade and, more importantly, Casey, which is really the more important of the two, but doesn't get as much hype just because Roe v. Wade has a little bit more public eye. Democrats are mad because that could be overturned by the Supreme Court, and as you saw in the clip I showed earlier, are protesting outside the private residences of Supreme Court justices. So I have a thought here, and it will roll into kind of the responses that the left is kind of throwing out there as a result of this Roe v. Wade thing. So my thought is that you can either be evil or you can just be dumb. And I give too much credit to the people I'm about to show you to just say that they're purely dumb. Now, some of them may be, because we're going to show some people on The View, one in particular. And so there may be room for that. But I think the other kind of solution there is way more feasible, that these people are just evil. Because what this actually is a political attempt to try to, this is kind of like magic sleight of hand, like, don't look at what I'm doing over here, just look at this hand. So what they don't want you to see is all of the horrible policies of the left that have just absolutely riddled this country with bullet holes, metaphorically, that have happened under the Biden administration. So don't look at how bad we are at this. We want you to get mad, because when you're mad and emotional, you don't think clearly about stuff. And so I think this is all for purely political gain. And then I can only implore, more than likely you agree with me if you're watching this show, but my hope is that I'm also reaching people who don't, and I know that I do. So for that reason, I would encourage you to think clearly about what we're about to show you, because what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you arguments coming from the left right now, and then on the background, I want you to think about the pro-life argument that I'm going to share with you right now. So let's first jump into our estimable, inimitable Kamala Harris doing her best Greta Thunberg impression. So here's her doing that.
The use of the law against women. Well, we say, how dare they? How dare they tell a woman what she can do and cannot do with her own body? How dare they? How dare they try to stop her from determining her own future? How dare they?
All right, so first of all, two things. One, I think the fact that she's standing up there talking about women's rights, but she won't even credit Greta Thunberg for the impression, I think she's stealing material from other women and not crediting them, so there's that. But then the second thing is this. She's making a statement of moral indignation. Now, I'm going to get into this in just a moment, but moral indignation about not being able to abort your baby. Forgive me if that doesn't seem hypocritical. And the rage, right? The rage you will see seeping through all of this. So you just saw it from Kamala, but now here is Grandma Warren giving her best Karen impression, showing how outraged she is that people will not be able to abort their babies. So here's that.
I've never seen you so angry. You seem to be...
This is what the Republicans have been working toward this day for decades. They have been out there plotting, carefully cultivating these Supreme Court justices so they could have a majority on the bench who would accomplish something that the majority of Americans do not want. 69% of people across this country, red states and blue states, old people and young people, want Roe versus Wade to maintain.
We don't want to dismember children in the womb, ma'am. We are not going to stand for dismembering 3,000 children in the womb every single day. And anybody, I don't care what type of leader.
Okay, so she's really mad there, really worked up. But I love that the slightest little pushback comes and then Liz Warren beelines out of there. So you heard the guy in the background saying, lady, you want to dismember children in the womb. And then so she chirps back a little bit, but of course she's not going to give a substantive argument to the fact that she's angry that women can't do this, when in fact the opposite should be the case. But it doesn't stop Whoopi also from being really, really irate about this issue as well. So here's Whoopi on The View showing just how angry she is about the human rights of women.
This law came about because people wanted people to have somewhere safe and somewhere clean. It has nothing to do with your religion. This is not a religious issue. This is a human issue. If you care about me as a human being.
All right, so Whoopi there is giving us just gold, not to mention, the hypocrisy of her whole COVID thing. People telling me what to do with my mask, like you were the one telling people what to do with their mask. And you were the one telling people, go get your vaccine. So you were the one that was telling people what to do with their body, and so now people can't tell you what to do with your body. Anyway, push that to one side, because at the end of their statement, she says this: "This is not a religious issue. This is a human issue." Well, actually, this is exactly what the pro-life community believes. We believe this is a human issue because we believe the baby in your belly is a human. We'll roll back to the religion thing, but before we do that, just one more. So here's Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks. I mean, you know what you expect from these guys, but here's her yelling at the camera.
We don't even have paid family leave. We don't even have affordable childcare in this freaking country. Okay, and the people who fight against those kinds of laws are Republicans.
And yet,
what do you want them to do with their kids when they have to go to work? What do you want them to do? What do you want them to do? I want them to answer that freaking question. Answer the question. Journalists, ask them the question. Ask them. Ask them.
Okay, take a chill pill, 1 second, take a breath and a drink of water, and I will tell you what you can do when you have to go to work. Or better yet, what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't snuff out your baby's life just because it's difficult for you to go to work, all right? There's a lot of options that you have that shouldn't be on the table. But the reason she's even saying this ridiculous statement and going unhinged is because I would argue that we are becoming a little bit more dense up here because of secularism. And here's what I mean by that. There's an ideology that all of this belies, that's underneath everything that was just said by these leftists. And it is the idea of materialism. It's the idea that just because you cannot see it, then it must not be real. That's essentially what materialism says. And materialism keeps us praising material wealth and material goods over and above the things that we know. Now, here's the key, that we know are truly more important. You'll never convince anybody that there is a tangible way that you can truly express the love, truly express in a tangible way the love that happens between a parent and a child. There's just something deeply embedded in the soul of a human being. It's not something that you can explain. You can't say it in words. You can try to show it in actions, but even that doesn't do it. You can try to write it down on paper, but it is not material, as it were. It's something that's deeply spiritual, actually. And there's many other things like this. And if we'll think about it, actually, the most important things in life are not material. And so here's why it's not only mentally suicidal, it's just dumb to buy into the idea of materialism, that there is no spiritual world, that there is no things that you can, outside of the scientific laboratory that you can prove with the scientific method. Of course, love is the greatest thing on the planet, but it is not something that can be studied and identified in a lab because it's not material. And this is why it's absolutely foolish to buy into some of the ideologies that we heard.
You can catch brand new episodes of Indie Thinker with Reed Huberman every Monday and weekly bonus episodes to keep you thinking throughout the week. But you have to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new episodes drop. If you enjoy this content, make sure to like this video and share it with friends.